Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Friday. And if you've taken some time out of your day to support the channel, I really do appreciate that. All right, so when you miss a fish, typically they are going to be close to where they were when they bit. They bit your bait not because they were scared of it, but because they were, interested in eating. So if you can get another bait to them, typically you can catch them. Now that's the most important thing, is to reel in whatever you just got bit on, pick up another rod and throw to them. By far the most important thing when it comes to missing a bass is giving them a different offering. Now the most obvious bait would be like a wacky rig or a Texas rig, something slow moving plastic that you can fish in all water columns, but most of the time on the bottom. Unfortunately, that doesn't always work. So the first time I ever heard about a scenario where it wasn't working, I was talking to a guy and he was fishing the Mississippi River. He said there was this big bass up in a foot of water, and every day I could go up there and throw a spook to it and it would blow up on it and my spook would just be sitting there. So a big topwater walking bait was the only thing to get him, get this fish activated. Now my thought, this was 10 years ago, but I said, no, you didn't try throwing a Texas rig to it? And the guy said, yeah, no, I was fishing the Mississippi River. I was junk fishing. I had 12 rods on the deck and I tried every single one of them. I couldn't get this fish to bite. He was sitting in a foot of water. His tail was coming out. I could see him. It was a 4 or 5 pounder and I couldn't get him to bite anything else. So I went back the next day, same thing, blew up on it and didn't get my bait. I couldn't catch him on anything else. And it wasn't until the 4th day, the fish must have been spawning or something, had him stuck in that foot of water. But he went up there the 4th day and he finally got a hook in the bass and caught it. But it just goes to show that unless you're giving the fish something that they really want, they're not going to bite it. Just because there's a fish there doesn't mean that they're going to eat whatever it is you throw to them. And I think we're seeing that with forward-facing sonar, that a bass is very curious. Most of the time they are going to follow your bait, but almost all the time they're not going to eat it. So you really got to give them what they want. So I'm going to give you a couple different baits that I've seen in specific situations that have worked, that kind of blew my mind. So the first one, low light conditions. This is when your Texas rigs, your wacky rigs, most of the time are not going to work unless you just put it right on their nose. So have another bait similar to what you're throwing. So let's say you're fishing shad spawn first 30 minutes of the morning. You're swimming a white jig with a big craw trailer on the back that's kicking and pulsing, and it's bright white so they can see it on those low light conditions. If you miss a bass on that and you don't have anything else that's similar to that, like a spinner bait, you're most of the time not gonna appeal to that fish to get them to bite. And the same thing goes if you're winding a little swim bait around through the grass and they're blowing up on it. They want something fast. They want something in their face. They want something on the top of the water. And if you try to fish something slow on the bottom to catch them, when they miss, a lot of times you're going to miss them. So you see the skinny dipper or the small swim bait coming to the grass, a poppin' frog or something right behind it. And I think the same thing goes for, let's say you're fishing really thick, heavy, matted vegetation and the bass are blowing up on your frog, but they're missing it. They're reacting to that. It's a reaction bite most of the time. So if you want to get those fish to react, what's the best way to get it? Now an 1.5 ounce Texas rig would be your best bet to follow up. Now I get that is a double standard because there's really no other baits you could fish through that. But it is the same thing with all these other baits where they're in the mood for a specific thing. If you do miss one on a Texas rig, let's say your buddy's in the front of the boat and he's flipping a chigger craw with kicking legs on a Texas rig and he misses one, he sets the hook and the bait comes flying, or just maybe the weight and the hook come flying back at you and you flip back in there with a beaver, you're going to catch them. But I think the reason you do catch them most of the time is because you're giving them a similar profile. It's in the same strike zone, and that's what the bass was in the mood for. It's probably imitating whatever that bass thought that first thing was. You're doing a good job imitating it with the second thing. So that's the deal, because it took me a long time to realize that it's not just throw any other bait to them, you're going to catch them. If you can do that, I think if you put it right on their nose, maybe, but you don't always know exactly where you just cast. So I think it's very important if you're losing fish or you're missing fish, and most of the time you are going to miss fish, like especially in the early mornings of the day, you're going to have some fish that just hit your bait. I mean, that's just the nature of fishing. especially on low light conditions. So very important to always have a follow-up bait that is similar but different to what you're throwing, but you can fish in the same strike zone. You're imitating the same type of forage. A lot of times you do that, you're going to catch them. Those bass, when they're biting, you know, they're not afraid. They're typically going to stay put, and they're catchable. And it's very important if you're fishing a pro-am or a team tournament or something like that, the guy in the back of the boat should be mopping these fish up. And if you don't want them to catch them, you know, throw back in there quickly and you should be able to catch them. So try that. Good luck to you guys, and I'll see you on the water.